Hello and welcome to another segment of the East Brunswick Advisory Health Council's Wellness Spotlight. After the common cold, what would you say is the #1 cause of lost time from work? It's back pain. It's alarming that an estimated 8 out of 10 people will experience some form of back pain in their lifetime. It causes workers to miss over 150 million workdays per year. Medical care for back pain costs over $100 billion a year. It's been found that after an initial back injury, you're 5 times more likely to be re-injured. What can you do to protect yourself and your family? Prevention is the key. On this segment of Wellness Spotlight, I'll be showing you how your back works and how to use it properly. You'll learn practical procedures, rules, and recommendations based upon the most current research for good posture and correct body mechanics, along with some simple self-care methods for relief of pain or injury to your neck and back. Before we begin, let's look at the anatomy of the back. And I have my special assistant here today, Diane, who's a video production assistant at EBTV. Thank you, Diane. Now let's look at the spine. This is a plastic model of a spine, and here's Diane, so we can reference the areas back and forth so you could see how the spine and the back works. The back is important because it contains the spine. And the spine is important because it houses and it protects the nervous system, which is responsible for controlling and coordinating every single function within your body. Every nerve from the brain, which would be right up here, just above, every nerve from the brain goes down through the spine or very close to it, and that carries energy which controls the functions of the different muscles and joints and organs and glands and tissues and systems within your body. Now, the energy from the brain comes out through the base of the spine and by way of the spinal cord. The spinal cord is basically a large extension cord that carries energy from the power station, the brain, down through the bones of the spine and then out. Now, on this model of the spine, the bones of the spine surround and protect the spinal cord, which travels all the way through it. Here is a cutaway version where half of the bone has been cut away and removed to reveal the inside of the bone. This white structure is the disc in between the bones of the spine, and these yellow structures coming out are the nerves which carry the energy. The reason why the spine is so important is because in addition to surrounding and protecting the delicate spinal nerves and allowing the energy to flow well, what can happen is the way these vertebrae in the spine interlock and fit together, there are openings that are created at each level. And it's through that opening that the nerve comes out off of the spinal cord. It travels out from in between the openings created by the way these vertebrae interlock and fit together with the disc in the middle, and then that allows the nerve energy to travel to the body. But what can happen is these vertebrae can misalign, and when the vertebrae misalign, it can put pressure on the nerve. And when the nerve becomes irritated from this type of pressure, it can interfere with the flow of that life energy and as a result interfere with your body's ability to be able to function at its best. So your body can be injured more easily. If it is injured, it impairs your ability to be able to heal more quickly. And since only 20% of the nervous system controls muscles and joints. Most people think that the nervous system is carrying more energy than that to your muscles and joints because it's the part of your body you can feel. But only 20% is dedicated to muscles and joints. The other 80% is responsible for controlling all of your organs and glands. But it also controls and coordinates how all those organs and glands work together. If you look carefully, the spine is comprised of 3 main curves. one curve in the lower back, one curve in the mid-back, and another curve in the neck going forward. Now, we're only born with one curve, one large curve from the base of your skull all the way down to your tailbone, which remains as the curve in the mid-back. And then as we develop, the curve in the neck develops from the 3rd to the 6th month of life, consistent with the time that the baby holds its head up. Why? Because this curve enables the head to transmit stress through the neck more effectively. The strongest architectural form is a dome. It's a curve. That's why you see domed roofs in climates which have a lot of snow, because the snow comes off of it. We should probably start building dome roofs in East Brunswick with the winter that we just had. The curve in the lower back develops from the 9th to the 18th month of life, consistent with the time that the baby begins walking, because it needs that curve to effectively transfer the weight of the torso to the lower extremities. So these curves are extremely important in your body's ability to be able to function effectively. Some of the tips that I'll be giving you today will be designed to help you preserve these curves so that you can minimize the effect of injury and reduce unnecessary stress on your spine. If we could take 2 vertebrae, a disc and nerve, out of the lower back, just pull that right out, this is what the model would look like. These are 2 vertebrae in the lower back. This is the disc in between. These are the nerves that are coming out. Now, when the vertebrae misalign and irritate the nerve, the name of this condition is called the vertebral subluxation complex. Vertebral because it involves the bone and the spine. Subluxation because it's not a dislocation, it's less than a dislocation, it's a subluxation. And complex because when the nerve gets irritated and energy doesn't flow to the body, your whole body doesn't function correctly, so it affects everything: muscles, joints, organs, glands, tissues, and systems, like I had explained. It's a complex. The effects throughout the body are global and profound. Now, a lot of people want to know, well, what is a herniated disc? Herniated discs can cause back pain too. Typically, what can happen is this. Let's first look at the anatomy of the disc. So if I take the spine now and I look at it from the top down, cutting it in half, and do a bird's eye view, and I turn the spine down this way, this is the disc. The disc is like a Tootsie Roll, okay? It has a liquid center surrounded by rings of cartilage, like the rings of a tree and how a tree grows. The rings of cartilage hold that liquid center in place, and you could see the close proximity to the spinal cord and the nerves that come out in the lower back. As long as the vertebrae are kept in correct alignment, then there's very little pressure that's being placed on the disc. But what can happen is, when the spine goes out of position, it could put pressure on the discs, much the same way that if I held a balloon between my hands and I squeezed straight down on it, the pressure would be distributed. But if I had a balloon between my hands and I squeezed it more on one side, that balloon would bulge out on one side. And that's what can happen. The disc can actually bulge. So this is an example of a bulging disc where the disc bulges back from behind, and this is bulging directly into the spinal cord. The rings of cartilage have not torn yet, so this is called a bulging or protruded disc. You may or may not feel any pain when a disc bulges or protrudes. Now, if time continues on with this condition unabated, or if a person suffers a severe trauma like a fall, accident, injury, motor vehicle accident, a sports-related injury, or some other type of repetitive stress over a long-standing period of time without the spine being correctly managed and maintained so it's healthier, eventually these rings of cartilage can be stressed to the point where they tear. And since it tears, much like a pool where the lining tears and the water spills out, if there's a tearing in the wall of cartilage, this liquid center begins to ooze out. And in the lower back, it typically oozes out into the area where the nerve is. That's called a herniated or a prolapsed disc. Now, once the disc is torn and herniated, there isn't anything that anybody could do to make this disc become normal again. Not chiropractic care, not physical therapy, not medical care, not even orthopedic surgery can make it like it was before it had torn. Once that egg is broken and scrambled, there's no putting it back inside the shell again. There are things that you can definitely do. There are medical procedures that can be performed, and chiropractic procedures that can be performed, and physical therapy procedures that can be performed to help manage a situation like this, depending upon the severity of it and what's clinically appropriate. But why let it get to that point? Let's discuss some things that you can do to be able to protect your back, allow the energy to flow to your body correctly, and prevent injuries and problems from occurring. What's the single most stressful position that your body could be in? It's sitting down. So whether you sit on the job as a driver, or doing administrative work, or as an accountant or an attorney, or you just like to sit and watch TV, watching the game on the weekend. When your spine is sedentary, that is the single most stressful position. In fact, the spine is 50 to 75% more stressed in a sitting position than it is when it's standing. Now, let me show you the correct way to sit, because many injuries that occur in the lower back start from the spine being repeatedly placed in a position that can pull it out of alignment and cause it harm and injury. And sitting is one of those positions. So if you look at me from the side, you can see that I'm sitting with a good curve in my lower back, as I showed you on Diane. The spine has a curve in the lower back. It's important to sit with a curve, and I'd like you to remember this. Preserve the curve. Sit with a good curve in your lower back. Now, many of us over time don't sit this way. I've observed many patients who come in to see me in my office, and when I'm speaking with them, they sit this way. It's no wonder their backs are hurting them. If you look at me this way, you could see that I don't have a curve in my lower back. In fact, my lower back is going in the opposite direction from the way that it should normally go. And if you look up at my shoulders and at my head is actually now carried out in front of my shoulders, and the human head weighs about 8 to 12 pounds, about as much as a bowling ball. So if your head is out in front of your neck, now that sets up a situation where the neck can become injured from strain on the muscles in the neck having to hold the head forward. It's a lot harder holding a bowling ball out in front of you than it is up over your arm. We know that when we're aiming a shot going bowling. We don't hold the ball out while we're waiting to aim. We hold it close to us because it's easier, and then we make our shot. Same thing. So when we sit in a chair, it's important to preserve the curve. Now watch what happens. If all I have to do is make this in my lower back curved, and watch what happens to my whole body. If all I do is make a curve in my lower back, now my shoulders automatically come up over my hips, and my head comes up over my shoulders, so everything is up in better alignment. My chest also comes out, and what you'll find is your diaphragm has more room to be able to move instead of the way that it would be moving with it being compressed down into the abdominal cavity. So when you come up, you'll be able to breathe much more easily. Now, most people who aren't used to sitting this way can complain of soreness in their lower back or some muscular fatigue because it's like an exercise, and any new exercise can cause muscles to fatigue. So one of the tips that I'd recommend you do is take about 5 minutes out of each hour to be able to practice sitting up effectively with a good curve in your lower back. And then you can relax and rest. And then add to that. Go to 6 minutes and 10 minutes and 15 and so on, so that whenever you're sitting preserving the curve and sitting correctly all of the time. That'll help protect you a great deal. While you're sitting, it's also important, don't keep any articles in your back pockets. Guys are especially guilty of this. They carry big wallets that they stick in their back pockets. Some of these wallets come out, they look like a pastrami sandwich that they've got stuck in their lower back. It's so thick and big. Now, when you put articles in your back pocket, whether it's a wallet or a handkerchief, and you sit down, especially on the seat of an automobile or on your sofa at home, it actually form-fits to your bottom, and it can act as a chock and push the hip up out of alignment on one side. With your muscles relaxed, that allows the hips and the spine to go out of alignment, and since the lower back is the foundation for the entire spine, any structure with an unstable foundation must itself be unstable. So supporting the lower back effectively is critical to avoiding mid-back and neck problems too. When you're sitting, cross your legs at the ankles and avoid crossing your legs at the knees. If you cross the leg at the knee, you have extra pulling on the muscles on one side going through your lower back. It's easier for the lower back to go out of alignment. If you insist on crossing your leg at the knee, then take time to switch from one leg to the other so both sides are being stretched. But remember to keep that curve in your lower back. If you're going to cross your legs, the best thing to do is cross them at the ankles and not at the knees. We all lift things, and it's important because most of the injuries that occur in the lower back occur because people are lifting incorrectly. So let's review how you're supposed to lift properly. And there's a couple of rhymes that I want to give you to be able to help you remember what you need to do. The first thing that you want to do when lifting something, whether it's a little child or it's a box filled with things, whether it's light or it's heavy, is to follow proper spinal mechanics. So the first thing we're going to do is protect the curve. So if I go to bend over to lift this box by my feet, if I go to bend over this way, how's the curve in my lower back? Well, you could see that it's flattened out. I don't have a curve in my lower back. So now my body is at risk for injury, especially when I go to pick this up. So the best thing to do is, remember, to bend at the knees, if you please. When you bend down, to get yourself closer to the object being lifted, if it's a small child, to zip up their coat, in the wintertime, or help them dress, or to get them close to you to pick them up, or if it's a heavy box to be lifted, bend at the knees first with your head and chest up over your hips. Then hold the object being lifted close to your body, okay? And when you lift, make sure you keep your nose between your toes. If I am lifting with my nose this way, my nose is not between my toes. I'm twisting my spine to the side. And this is the cause of many types of severe injuries, especially disc injuries, based upon the way that the spine compresses the discs in the lower back and the vulnerability of the nerves. So keep your nose between your toes and bend at the knees. So lift the object, holding it close to your body. Set your stomach muscles. Use your stomach muscles because they're important to help stabilize your lower back. So set your stomach muscles and then raise yourself up. Many back strains and injuries occur around the house. And one of the most common of repetitive motion syndrome problems that occurs is when we're working at the oven, pulling something out, or taking materials out of the dishwasher or out of the dryer. All of these things open up from the front. So if you could imagine this chair is either an oven or a dishwasher or a dryer with the door open, if you're bent over it like this with no curve in your lower back and your knees are straight, you'll start to feel the strain in your lower back. But here's what you can do to be able to protect yourself. Try this. Make a curve in your lower back. Make the back curved, and then bend at the knees slightly. This way, you can work taking materials out of the dishwasher or out of the dryer, and or basting the turkey or whatever you're doing at the oven, and you'll find that most of the stress will go to the quadriceps muscles in the front of your thigh, and you're going to feel less pressure in your lower back. Well, anybody who's lived in the Northeast this past winter certainly knows what one of these things is. Obviously, it's a snow shovel, and a lot of injuries occur when people are shoveling, whether it's the snow or working out in the garden and moving dirt or other material. The best type of shovel to use when you're shoveling snow is this type. It's ergonomically designed with a handle that's bent. in order to prevent your body from bending over too far. And when you're shoveling, it's best to get behind the shovel and, if the snow allows, push the material along the ground as far as you can and then lift it up and forward. What you want to do is prevent yourself from picking the snow up and twisting to the side. As you can see, I'm twisting my body. My nose is no longer between my toes as I'm throwing the snow off to the side. It's best to just face forward and throw the snow forward if you can. It's also a good idea to test the weight on the end of the shovel. We had all kinds of snow that fell this past season. Some of the snow was light and fluffy. Some of it was very dense and heavy and slushy. So test the amount of weight that you have in your shovel, because repeatedly shoveling heavy amounts of weight over the course of your whole driveway can seriously impact the stability of your spine based upon how you're moving it. So if you follow these shoveling practices, you'll be much safer. Whether you work at a desk to do your monthly bills or you're chained to it 8 hours a day working for a company, this is a very stressful position to be in. Let me give you some tips about how to set up your desk so it's more ergonomically friendly. Let's start with the chair. The chair should be set at a height where, when you're sitting, your knees are at a 90-degree angle with your thigh. In other words, the leg at a 90-degree angle to the thigh, and the thigh is at a 90-degree angle to the torso. So 90 here, 90 here. All right? You want to be able to get your legs all the way under to get you close to the work. You want to be able to rest your arms on the desktop so your elbow is at a 90-degree angle and that your wrist is relatively straight so you could work on the keyboard. If the keyboard is elevated and your wrists are bent, that can put pressure on the wrists, and it can help produce a carpal tunnel problem or numbness and tingling in your fingers or pain in your hands. The monitor is very important. This particular monitor is too low for my height. The correct positioning of the monitor should be higher for me so that at my eye level, it would go to about the top third of the monitor, right about here. If for me to work at this monitor for an extended period of time, my head would have to be down, and now I'm going to be straining my neck and my upper back. Make sure that the monitor and the keyboard are directly in front of you. Many people work with a monitor and a keyboard to their side, so they're constantly twisted or their head is turned while they're working. Over time, you know what this will do to you. So try to position your monitor and keyboard so it's directly straight ahead. And your phone should be on the opposite side of your handedness. So if you're a right-handed person, the phone goes on the left side, and vice versa. A lefty person puts it on the right. Why? Because when the phone rings, you want to be able to pick it up with your left hand, and this way the cord isn't across the work area. If I keep it on, I'm right-handed, so if I keep the phone on the right side, now I'm picking it up like this, and if I have to write, what am I going to do? The cord goes in the way. Plus, how am I going to write if it's on my right side because it's already in my right hand? So instead of fumbling around with the phone on my left side, which would be best for me because I'm right-handed, the cord is out of the way, and I can write with a free hand. Big mistake that people make, and what strains the neck and causes problems, is when they wedge the phone between their ear and shoulder. You see what's happening and how my neck is being strained and how nerves can be pinched if I do this repeatedly over an extended period of time. Even if you use one of those attachments that goes on the handset, you're still bending your head over to one side. So what can you do to avoid that? Hold the phone with the opposite hand. Well, then how do you write? Use your elbow to stabilize the paper. And this way, you'll be able to write without the paper moving, with your head and neck in a better position, so there's less strain over time. You know, many people complain about injuries that occur while they're sleeping. And that's because the position that they're in can be very stressful to the spine. For those of you at home that sleep with a pillow, always put the pillow underneath your head, neck, and your shoulders. You run into problems if your pillows are too high. If you put your pillow higher up, this way. And this happens a lot for people who watch TV or read in bed. They start out nice and high, but then they do what I call the 11 o'clock slide. And they slide down on the headboard, so now the pillows are stressing their head down on their neck. Well, you remember what I showed you about the curve in your neck. You're not preserving the curve any longer like you would if your pillow was all the way down this way. With it underneath your head, it's stressing your chin down to your chest. It's harder for you to breathe, and it's going to strain the neck. If you sleep on your side this way, your pillow should be thick enough so that it holds the head and neck in alignment with the rest of your spine. Your head and neck should be in alignment with the rest of your spine. If your pillow is too thin, then your head will drop down this way and strain your neck. If you have too many pillows stacked too high, it'll do just the opposite and strain you on the opposite side. So make sure that your pillow is positioned correctly. For those of you who sleep on your stomach, and many of us were trained to be stomach sleepers as babies, and it's tough to change that, then what I would recommend you do is, instead of sleeping in the middle of the pillow with your head turned at about 60 degrees and straining your neck, instead use the edge of the pillow. So your head is at about a 40 to 45 degree angle this way. It's still pressure on the neck, but it's much less, and you'll find that you'll wake up with much less of a strain. People who awaken in the morning with numbness and tingling in their arms or no feeling in their arms typically have pressure on the nerves in the neck, and that's what's causing the problem. So changing to a correct pillow or changing your sleeping position can be very effective. I would recommend that you avoid watching TV or reading in bed unless you know to stop doing that when you feel yourself getting sleepy. If you can't tell the difference, then sit in a chair or on the sofa watching TV or reading, and then go to your bed when it's time to go to sleep. When it's time to get out of bed, many people have a tough time, especially if you have a back injury. What you want to do is, instead of trying to sit straight up this way and strain your back, turn onto your side, all the way onto your side first. Then, using your arm and your elbow while you're lying on your side, swing your legs around at the same time while you push yourself to a sitting position. Now, once you're in the sitting position, don't get up yet. Slide yourself first all the way to the edge of the bed or the sofa. Then, put your knees apart, put your feet underneath your body, and then holding on to the side with your head up and holding on, let your legs do the lifting and raise yourself up this way. That'll be the safest way for you to be able to get up much more easily. Children are especially susceptible to injuries to their growing necks and backs. And one of the biggest culprits, the schoolyard bully that they carry around with them every single day, is the backpack. We have an entire wellness spotlight devoted to backpack safety, where you can learn how to choose the right backpack, how to pack it, how to lift it, and how to wear it correctly. All you need to do is go to ebtv3.org, and you can go to the archived Wellness Spotlight programs, and you can see a show in its entirety dedicated to backpack safety. So today everybody went to school, back school. I hope you learned a lot. We studied the anatomy of your back, how it works. We studied the best way for you to be able to use it, whether you're in the office, at home, or working around the yard. We showed you how to be able to prevent injuries, and also to be able to use your body to its best capacity so that you can have the healthiest, best life possible. I'm Dr. Ken Friedman, president of the East Brunswick Advisory Health Council, reminding you that wellness works when you work it.